Good afternoon, and welcome to today's VetNet Entrepreneurship Track Hangout entitled Media Interview Basics. My name is Michael Shenik, and I'm the Program Manager for VetNet here at the Institute for Veterans and Military Families located at Syracuse University. Today, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about media interview basics, where we will learn the basics of conducting a great media interview and keeping calm with your talking points. Today's Hangout's a little bit different, where we are keeping it private to the participants of an upcoming VWise conference. You are able to watch this out on YouTube, but just know that we will not be forwarding questions onto the presenter. Today's presenter is Kalen Arreola, CEO of Stars and Stripes Marketing, LLC, and a former U.S. Army Public Affairs Officer. I'll turn things over to Kalen, let her introduce herself, and then we'll get started with the slides. Over to you, Kalen.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me okay. Good morning. I was a public affairs officer for about 10 years with the Army, and a lot of the same principles that you learn doing that job actually apply to you dealing with media now that you're a small business owner, because eventually you're going to be a bigger and bigger business owner as you grow over time. So what we're going to go over today is just some tips on conducting media interviews, different lingo, language that media use during when you're working with them. We'll go over that, and then also developing talking points for your business and just making sure that you have your messaging kind of set before you sit down with the interviewer. And because this is in preparation for VWise, we'll have another sit down in person once we are in San Antonio all together, right before the conference kicks off, to go over any final things. So today I'm going to do, it's very brief. I think there's 10 slides, 13 slides total. So we'll go through that, and then at the end there's a little practical exercise, and I'll follow up with this Hangout. I will email everyone a little follow-up worksheet to do the exercise, and then when we all meet in San Antonio, we'll go over everybody's information and we'll do some dry runs. But I'm excited to get started, and I'm really glad that you could make it on the Hangout. So let's get started. And I can't see the slide deck on my side, so I don't know if that's supposed to pop up at some point.
So, Kalen, if you go along the bottom where you see the 5 boxes, so my picture, your picture, Leah's, and Megan's, if you click on the box that says VetNet Entrepreneurship Track, that will make that your main display within the Hangout, and you should be able to see that on the screen.
It's there now. Great. Okay, so next slide, please. We will jump right in. Okay, so here's kind of what I'll be talking about today. Pretty self-explanatory. I will also be talking about a few things that are not listed on here, but this is our overview. Next slide. Okay, obviously, why interview with the media? The reason we're doing this training is because VWise really, Megan talked to me about the importance of not just the program itself getting out there so that we can have more female veterans enter into the program and really benefit from the resources that VWise has to offer, but also for you as an individual business owner to get some media for your business, because your success story is also VWise's success story. It's all of us, you know, together as a team, and we want to share that story with the media because they're a conduit to the world. So things now that are taped and shown and aired in the public, they're also saved, they're online. So yes, you get publicity, you get credibility because people are seeing you on a news agency. You can use those clips as well for your own company, and I would recommend you do that. Any media interview that you do that you can get a recording of or a printout of, I would save those. And if it's a crisis situation, we're really not going to get too much into crisis communications for this because it's really conference-driven media reach that we're doing. But if it's a crisis and there's something that isn't so great that the media is reporting on and it has to do with your company, you definitely want to talk about that as quickly as possible. They always say go ugly early. That's what that bullet point in there is regarding. Next slide, please. So before we even start pitching out to the different outlets, what I've talked to Megan about, we're going to actually do a press release that serves as the official press release for the conference, and it talks about all the different components of the conference. It highlights some of the cool things that we're going to be doing there, the pitch contest, for example, a little bit of stuff that's on the agenda, maybe some keynote speakers. It's an overview. It talks about the partners of the program who help make it possible, just so the media gets an idea of the event, what it's about, and some of the meat of who's going to be there and why. Why are we even doing this? What's the value of this for our female veteran entrepreneurs? So that press release will go out across the nation. That's going to go out on the main wire, and every outlet in the U.S., hopefully, that we pitch it to will receive that. And then we're going to also do localized press releases this time. We haven't done that before. VWise hasn't done that before, but they are actually excited to tailor some press releases directly with your business. And so where the research comes in, as we're writing these releases about your company and kind of tailoring that to where you live, that way you can do some local interviews, we're doing research to find out what news outlets that are near you that are relevant to what you're doing. So for example, there's a resource listed there, mondotimes.com. Definitely, I can send you these slides after this so that you don't have to worry about writing that down. But if you go on there, you can search by where you live, different categories. Some people, as you know, are just sports writers. You know, would we want to send a business conference about women veteran entrepreneurs to a sports outlet? Maybe if your company is a sporting goods company, it would be totally relevant if the actual outlet reports on stuff like that. Maybe it's a sports channel that has a business segment once a month. Who knows? There's always a reason to pitch certain ones, but you want to know who you are pitching to and why that this story is even relevant to their news outlet. Is it something they even cover? You don't want to be shooting press releases out to people who really are just going to delete them right away because it's not even something that they cover on a regular basis. So knowing who you're sending this information to is crucial. And even though it takes a lot more time on the front end to kind of research, I mean, one by one you want to go in, unless you pay for a subscription, which are pretty expensive, to services like Vocus or Beacons. I know there's a whole bunch of different PR services where you can search reporters and outlets. They're expensive. So I say if you are a small business looking to do research on media outlets, it's just the old-fashioned way. You go in, you Google search news outlets in the San Antonio area. Mondo Times can, you know, quicken that process up. San Antonio, what is it? There's a whole bunch. So that's what we're going to be working on, and we will have a full list, and we organize all that for you. We send the pitches out, but knowing who the reporter is too. So almost every newspaper, I would guess, almost every regular mainstream newspaper has a military beat reporter, a sports reporter, a hard news reporter, features, fashion, all those different things. And so we try to match our pitches up with the reporter and the news outlet, both, that's going to be most interested in the story. And so when you're doing this on your own, say you have an event that you're doing to promote your business locally and it's outside of VWise, just for your own knowledge, that's how we determine who we pitch to. And it makes sense because you're doing the same thing with your customers. If you're looking for who your ideal customer is, you're going to do the same type of research. You know, what do they buy? When do they buy? How am I reaching them? Same thing with media. You're looking, who's going to care about my story? And then what do you want to communicate to them when you pitch to them? Your mission and your vision of your company, which you have been in business for a little while now, so you should have that fleshed out. Your elevator pitch, if you have an elevator pitch, 30-second, you can translate that into a press release format, and I will also send you guys some templates for that as well. And then, of course, the event, product, service. There's so many times, because I actually was a reporter a long time ago when I first graduated college. I worked just really, you know, feature stories only, just kind of fun news. I had a little column. And you'd be surprised how many people send you press releases and they don't put the location of the event because they're so tied to that event. They're eating, sleeping, and breathing the preparation for the event, and they want everyone to know about it. They want all these news media to come and cover it, but they don't tell the media where. And to be honest, if you're receiving, 50 press releases a day, if you're a really busy reporter, you're not going to bother to follow up if you have something else that's more pressing, or you have a really cool event where they did tell you where it's going to be. You're going to tend to just be like, okay, well, if I have time, I will call them back and get more information. You want to get all the important, where it is, what are you doing, why are you doing it, and that type of thing. So, and then your story, I would also have maybe 2-3 paragraphs on why did you start your business, what is your background, how did your background influence the business that you started. So all of those things are so important, because your personality, a lot of times people hire you because of who you are, not necessarily what you do. There are a bajillion marketing firms out there. I'm the only Kalen that there is doing Stars and Stripes marketing, so my story is relevant to my clients, and the people that identify with me, I want them as my client because they are going to understand why I started my company, what my focus is, and why it's important, and that kind of thing. And that's the same for anybody's business. Your personal story goes a long way. And the media, that's their job. They tell stories. And so you're going to want to tell your story when you're pitching to them as well. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm not going to go too big into this sender, message, receiver, communication. All I wanted to say about that is just keep in mind all of those things as you're communicating and you're putting together your story. What do you want the listener, the reader, the viewer to walk away with? What is your most important message? And when you're doing these interviews, sometimes people may ask you a question that throws you off a little bit, or maybe you didn't prepare for it. What I like to do underneath the practice section is just put together a series of questions that you think a reporter may want to ask you based on what you do. So if I'm interviewing a small business and I have a business beat column in the local business journal, let's just say, and I'm doing stories on female veterans who have launched successful businesses, maybe I want to know, how long have you been in business? Why did you start your company? What makes you different than all the other plumbers out there? What makes you, are you passionate about your business, and why? What drives you to get up in the morning? Being an entrepreneur is not easy. There are so many times that people want to give up and get a job and just say, you know what, I'm tired of payroll, I'm tired of hiring, and I'm tired of, the constant barrage of fires that I need to put out. And so, that the reason that you keep doing this every day, that's another thing the reporter may want to ask you. Start to brainstorm a lot of those questions, and I will email you guys like a little bunch of little cheat sheets for this afterwards, but those are things you want to think about when you're preparing for your interview. And body language is another one. So practicing in front of a mirror, practice in front of friends. If you have kids or family members that'll watch you talk about yourself to them and then give you feedback on, do you seem natural? Do you seem nervous? Don't be nervous, especially for these VY interviews. Seriously, I know it's nerve-wracking, but they want to know your story. They really do. They want to get to know you, because the more that you're natural and talking to them conversationally, the more they have to tell that story. When you're rigid and they're like, oh, how long have you been in business? 2 years. Okay, what do you, the reason is that you started this business. Well, I really am good at plumbing, so I think I'm just going to be a plumber. And then, I've seen people get freaked out, and then they don't really say anything. And then at the end of the interview, the reporter is looking at their notes like, how am I going to write this up? Or what soundbite can I even use, So from their point of view, they want to tell the best story they can tell, and especially if it's a feel-good thing. Like VWise is a feel-good thing. It's a resource for female veterans and spouses, and it crosses that spouse-veteran line, so everybody's there together as a big military family. Is gender-specific, which, female-owned businesses are rising in this country, and that's a story that people are already reporting on. So don't be nervous. Your story is important. People want to hear your voice. And you guys especially, I see you logged in, you have interesting stories. I've read all the bios. And, you know, to go from just helping out your husband with a curtain for his ship, and then all of a sudden you have this business, you know, that's an amazing story. And then you're, Leah, I know you're in tactical stuff and special operations units. I mean, people don't know what we do, and so your story is different and unique, and it's so important that you talk to them in a conversational tone and you're relaxed, because you know where you came from. It's about you and what you do and why you love to do it. Okay, next slide. Okay. So these are different types of interviews. There's little tips and tricks for each one. We'll just go through these so that you have an idea. Next slide. Okay, so there's different ways they do it. Obviously, live television is a little bit more nerve-wracking because you're going to be on the air as you're speaking. So you just, you know, take a deep breath, get into your Zen mode, talk to the reporter. A lot of people want to stare right into the camera, but it's very awkward looking at an object while you're talking. And a lot of times when you talk directly to the reporter, that's why reporters tend to stand right next to their cameraman, because when you talk to another person, it's not as scary. And it looks as if you are looking at the camera as well. So talking to the reporter and being calm and just like a conversation with that person, it still looks like you're looking at the camera, but you're not as nervous because you're connecting with that reporter while you're telling your story. The preparation, 10 to 15 second sound bites, that's a great one, especially if you have an elevator pitch. Try to make that extremely tight. You know, what do? I am a plumber that started this business 5 years ago because, you know, I was a single mother and I didn't have anyone to help me. And so I learned how to do it myself, and I started doing it for my friends. Whatever it is, know your story and just try to put it in as succinct terms as you can, because they don't have a lot of time. A lot of times your story is going to be a minute 30, something like that, depending on what it is. So yeah, the alternate technique to that, just to write down 3 sentences, you know, 27 seconds, it's not a lot of words. And I'm going to send you a cheat sheet on that too, so that when you're building it out, there's a certain amount of words that you can fit in a certain amount of time when you're speaking. And even if it seems like it's not a lot of words, I have tried to beat the clock on that. I've even taped myself to try to, then you sound like you're talking too quickly, or you're not into what you're saying. You're just like regurgitating things if you try to talk too fast. So they have timers, like broadcasters. They know, you know, in 30 seconds I can say this many words. I know in 15 seconds I can say this many words, and that'll help you as you prepare for an interview, especially if the reporter says, you know what, I really want to cover, she has such an interesting story, I'm going to be in San Antonio, let me stop by the conference on this day, but I've only got, you know, 20 minutes to get the interview because we have, you know, XYZ event that we need to be at right afterwards. That's how you can prepare for those quick opportunities, and that you won't miss, because you'll already know how to tailor it to the time that you've been given. Now, if it's taped and it's not live, that's even better, because if you mess up, you can just stop and like leave a pause and say, hey, can we restart that? And usually they want to, because they want your soundbite to sound and look good. Because when the editor comes in, the editor's typically not the person that interviewed you. Sometimes the cameraman is doing the editing, but not always. And so, you know, the editor's going to just review all this footage and try to pull the best sound bites, and, you know, you want to know that you're sounding the way you want to sound and that it's something that they can actually use, and they're not going to dump, you know, a quote that you really wanted them to use because, you know, you didn't say it right, you stuttered or something went funky. So, you know, practicing will help that. And then the resisting over talking. If someone asks you a question and you could answer it 75 ways, knowing your talking points and your messages will help you with that. Just, you know, something conversational, but you can tell by the reporter. If they keep pushing you to say more, then maybe you need to expand a little bit. If they look like they're going to start to talk over you, just try to finish your point as quickly as you can, because they may have another thing that they want you to touch on. Okay, next slide, please. In-studio interviews, I don't know if we will get one of these. A lot of times you can be sitting with the anchor on television. It's not all that common. I know I've only done one of those, and actually it wasn't in the studio at the anchor desk. It was on a morning show where they took the camera out in the back, and we were on live TV, but it wasn't actually sitting down at the anchor desk. But this is really where you want to role play with someone. If you're going to do an interview that's actually either on the set somewhere or on at the anchor desk, because you're going to be typically having a conversation with the anchor. They usually, you've seen all the morning shows, they zoom out, they've got two people sitting at a desk, they're talking. You know, always do the research. Have they had other small business owners on this segment before? You know, is this reporter somebody that, like, talks over the guest a lot? Do they tend to let the guest talk a lot? You can learn a lot before you go on these by just doing some research. And if you're in an in-studio interview, dress really well from head to toe. You should do that anyway if it's a broadcast interview, but some people, you know, go in there looking really great and make sure your hair is great. If you need to have makeup on, wear makeup, because those cameras can drown you out. The lighting can drown out your face. So eyeliner, mascara, eyeshadow, you'll be surprised how little makeup it looks like you have, because the lights tend to make your skin look a lot lighter. So think about all those things as you're putting your outfit together. Wearing super bright colors is not always great, and avoid colors that they use for a green screen, because you don't know where they're going to make you stand. We had a fun field trip where one of my friends, we weren't on actual TV, but we were kind of doing some pretend interviews, and she wore a green jacket, and their green screen was green. So her entire body disappeared, and all the imagery that was behind her saw through, so it looked like her head was floating and her feet were like disconnected. So try to wear the muted colors if you can, black jacket with maybe a blue shirt under and black pants or something like that. Think about all those things. You know, do they have a digital background? If that background is digital, they may have a green screen behind you. You don't want your body parts to disappear. So word to the wise, wear clothes that are not flashy, just muted tones. Wear what the anchors wear. You'll see the kind of clothing that they wear. When you get, if Fox News calls and says, hey, we want to have you on Friday morning, you know, we have this segment about small businesses, go on their website, pull some video, look at what they wear, and try to wear something similar so that you know that your body's not going to disappear. Okay, next slide. Same thing again, know why you're being interviewed. You know, you want to definitely, this is simple, we are here to talk about women entrepreneurs that are veterans or military spouses. It's very specific. You know, we want them to know our story. Coming from the military community, they want to know what your business is, and knowing your talking points is key to that. As you do more media interviews, not just for this conference, but in your local hometowns or where you do business primarily, you will start to meet different media people, and you can constantly work with them. So once you get that relationship, you'll know what you can talk about or not talk about. You can ask them anything, especially if there's the media planners or the producers. They're not going to be on TV with you, but they do write up the segments before. So, you know, you can talk to the producer and say, you know, do I typically, you know, what do you recommend that I talk about? How is the segment going to run? They will help you. If they have time to talk to you about that, they will. I mean, I've asked, you know, can I get an outline of it? And she's like, well, we're not going to have time to send you an outline, but I will tell you that you're going to stand outside, you're going to be talking to this reporter, you're going to be, and they ran me through the whole order of the morning show segment so that I knew what I was going to be doing and how I was going to talk and all that. And so it was, that's really good to know also, that you can talk to those people before you go there. And background off the record, if it's a really controversial topic, like, for example, Ebola is in the news everywhere, and they just did an interview with a nurse from Texas that Matt Lowry did. He had her on live TV. She was on Skype talking about her experience. And he said, you know, hey, you know, when we talked on the phone earlier, you mentioned this, you know, and if you tell a reporter, like, this is what's happening, but I really don't want that aired on, you know, on TV because XYZ, she had her lawyer on there too, but that's where background off-the-record comments kind of come in. If it's really controversial, you don't want to be quoted, you know, those kind of things. And if it's print media especially, I know I kind of jumped into broadcast also, but print media, you're going to talk to that reporter without anything being recorded. Maybe they're recording audio. Let them know what is good for quoting and what is not good for quoting. And a lot of times they will take that into account when they do their story. The next slide, please. Okay, radio, there's a ton, especially in the, I want to talk about the radio stations specifically for military. There's a lot of radio stations that are internet radio stations that are online. We're going to pitch to those as well, because honestly, those are great. They're smaller, it's usually an independent radio broadcaster. Even on regular ones, there's a lot of morning shows that do military type segments. I know there's one here in San Diego, and they talk to a different service member every week, and they try to help them get a job. So there's just different, be creative. Look at the radio shows that you have that people may not even think to pitch to, and find out how you can pitch with your angle. You know, I'm a small business owner, I do this. I know you have a show about veterans on this day. Would you interview? And learn when is a good time when they have those things that you can take advantage of. Okay, next slide, please. This is the internet broadcasting, just like the radio. Anything that you do now, whether it's broadcast or radio or podcast or blog or print story, it's going to end up online a lot of times. And so that's why your messaging is so important. So definitely the niche that you're in, the niche angles are what's going to get you stories a lot of times, especially when you're not so well known. You know, if a big initiative by Google comes out, all the media is probably going to jump on that. Google's probably going to have their own special media day where they invite all the media to come to Google and they tell everybody what's going on. When you're a small business, you're looking for those little niche opportunities to tell your story, even if the news outlet's not even that big. It's still a good way for you to, number one, practice, and number two, to save these little news clips of you speaking. I've done so many blog talk radio things, but I can keep those little recordings and put them on my press page on my website, and then people can hear me talk about what I do, even though it may not be a big news outlet. If they find out about me somehow, then they listen to the podcast that I did, even if it was a year ago, they get an idea of my personality. So internet is pretty much, you know, it's separated out in these slides. I had it separate, but it's really, everything kind of feeds into that, as we all know. The internet makes the world very small. And then the next slide is about social media. Same thing, but just wanted you to really think about that. It's anything that's put online anywhere. The social media world is funny because a lot of the videos you see are really short. So like when the media puts a video out on social media, they put out, you know, it's like 30 seconds to a minute long. Every type of media that you interview on, comes back to the talking points and just old-fashioned preparation, you know, knowing what you want to say about your business, about yourself, and how do you want to appeal to customers who may see you on TV or who may be interested in your services or your story. But utilize these things. Even if it's an obscure radio show on the internet by some guy in his basement and you called in on the phone and he may not have a lot of followers, if you have a lot of followers on Twitter, share the link, because it's still you being recorded by someone else, and it's interactive because the other guy is asking you questions. So don't underestimate, you know, those little interviews. Those are such good ways to get your feet wet and start practicing, you know, even with just someone with a smaller, like, blog talk radio station. Okay, and the last slide is the practical exercise. I know we went through a lot of this stuff kind of fast, But I would definitely, I'm going to send you a worksheet about this, about putting your messages together. And when we get to the actual event, I'm going to have a tripod with a camera set up on it, and we're going to do some mock interviews so that you can get comfortable. But the crisis interview, we may do a little bit with that, but for this, you know, it's a really feel-good story. So we're probably just going to focus more on your messages, putting 3 solid messages together, and knowing, you know, how you're going to share that with the world and what you want them to know about you. It's going to make your interviews a lot better, and you can talk more casually. You won't feel as stressed out if they ask you a question, because you just keep, even if you repeat yourself multiple times, it's totally good. 3 messages, repeat them 3 times. That's totally fine, because you want everyone to leave there. How many times do you have to see a Geico commercial before you remember, you know, the funny joke in it? And people will see it 15, 16 times. So repeating yourself is fine, and that's what we'll do on that sheet. So we'll talk about that more when we see each other in San Antonio, but I think that's pretty much all the basics that I wanted to go over.
Okay, thanks, Kalen. Leah and Pat, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask now in preparation for the conference, and also keeping in mind that there may be some folks who are watching this, you know, out on YouTube, so any questions that you think may be beneficial to them?
You can go ahead, Pat, if you've got one.
Well, I'm not sure. Kalen, is it possible that you could send some questions to us that you would ask if you were the reporter back when, in the days when you were the reporter? What would you want to know from us so that we can sort of get it from the mouth of a professional, from you?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I mean, if I were writing a story about you guys, I would want, definitely I'd want your bio before I even interview you. I would want to know your website link. So, you know, having like a basic media kit, and we can talk about what goes into a media kit. It doesn't have to be complicated. The write-up that I got about your business in particular was really great, and it had a picture of you with your .com. It showed your personality and why you started your company, and that's huge, you know. So I'll send that to you for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that question for sure. So I know you had asked me previously about my social media, and I'd explained I've kind of flipped it and started over again this year. I need to do something with that prior to sitting down with people, probably, don't I? Just get some basic information on my social media sites. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say definitely have a great cover image that gives your business a personality. Okay. And have a logo on the small thumb. I mean, check out some other bigger companies and see how they do it too, and I can talk about that offline. Okay. But just in the description field, you know, web link, and make sure when they click on your actual website that when they click back to other social media, because I think yours had some social media icons. Yes. That kind of scrolls down on your site. Make sure those link to active things, or don't list them. Okay. If you're not going to have it done in time and it's too stressful to just, you don't want to throw it together haphazardly either. So, you know, just take them down. Take down things that you don't have completely ready yet. Okay.
And in terms of crisis or being ugly, which I know this is a feel-good time, and the VWise it's a lot of positive energy versus negative, but if what's available, for example, in the tactical apparel and gear world out there now for women is not necessarily positive, if I were to ever speak to the competitors and kind of how they miss with women, essentially, they've missed the mark a little bit, is that really going to negative? I mean, not that I want to spend much time on that, but if I were to, like, you know, one little bite about it, it does make a difference a little bit. Is that too negative?
No, that's really good, actually. That differentiates you from because when I was overseas, I had the same man gear that everybody gets, and they just try to fit you like as small as they can find a size, and it's uncomfortable, and you end up with injuries actually. So,
Right.
you know, that's an important part of your story. I think you should. I can work with you on that offline too. So just let me know when you have a good time. But
Yes.
in a way that's informative. You know, as a female veteran who works in special operations units, I found that a lot of the gear doesn't fit me well. And I started my company to help other female veterans. It prevents injury. It does this. It does that. And what are the benefits of the, you know, why did you do it? And that's your, like, that's not only your story, but it's like your selling proposition as well. Like, this is why I want you to buy my product, because it's going to help people.
Okay.
You know, we start businesses to solve problems, right? Not start problems. We start businesses to solve a problem, so that's what you want to get across. It's not negative, it's differentiating. So, you know, you can be really funny with yours, because you can show the funny, like us trying to fit into like manly gear and it never worked right, and like the funny songs that we have with it. I mean, you know, that's up to you, but that's going to be the voice. So that's, as you're thinking about your brand's voice and your brand identity, that's also, you could do it different. You can make it very tactical or funny, or, you know, decide.
True, that's so true. Okay, I know I tend to, when people become a little bit too negative, I tend to tune out, so I don't want the audience to tune out on me, because, you know, so that's why I guess I want to keep that shortened to a minimum, but make the good point of that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and email me for sure. Let's set up a time, because I have some ideas for you.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great. So Leah and Pat, any other questions before we wrap things up?
I'm great. Thank you.
Great. So Kalen, do you have any final parting words of wisdom before we close out the hangout today?
No, just practice. Fill out the sheets I'm going to send you. And if you want me to go, I will block an hour of time out for all of the media leads, and we can sit down and talk about anything you want.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much, Kalen. That was so helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kalen, for coming on today. For all three of you, have a good couple weeks, and we'll see you in San Antonio. Safe travels to Texas, and I look forward to seeing some of you again and meeting some of you for the first time. So with that being said, we'll close out today's hangout. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.